IELTS Wordcraft. Today, we are diving straight into mastering some absolutely essential business, finance, and economy vocabulary.
So let's just jump right in. To really nail these concepts and boost that score, we need to build our lexical foundation first.
All right, here is the complete master list of the 20 essential IELTS words we're going to conquer in this explainer. Take a quick look. We'll go through them one by one with clear definitions and simple examples before we see them actually in action.
Let's kick things off with our first 5. Allocate means to distribute something for a specific purpose. For example, they allocate funds for education. Next up is accumulate, which is to gather or build up over time. You know, like how dust tends to accumulate quickly. Then we have aggregate. That's a total formed by combining parts. So you'd say, the aggregate score was high. Bond refers to a connection or a financial certificate, as in, they share a strong bond. And finally, bulk, meaning a large volume or quantity. Buying in bulk saves money.
Moving right along to the next 5. Compensate means to pay or make up for something, like we will compensate you for your time. Diminish is to become less or smaller. The pain will diminish soon. To equate is to consider as equal. You really cannot equate wealth with happiness. Equivalent means equal in value or function. 1 mile is equivalent to 1.6 kilometers. And exceed, well, that's to go beyond a limit. Simply put, do not exceed the speed limit.
Okay, let's tackle our next group. Exploit means to use selfishly, or simply to use effectively. They exploit the natural resources. Facilitate is to make an action or process easier. The new app will facilitate learning. Fluctuate means to change continually. For instance, prices fluctuate with the seasons. A grant is financial aid given by an organization or the act of agreeing to give. She received a research grant. And invest means to put money into something for profit. It is definitely wise to invest early.
And wrapping up our foundation, we have labor, which is hard physical or mental work. Building the house required intense labor. A levy is a tax or extra charge imposed. The government imposed a new levy. Margin is an edge or the difference between cost and selling price. We operate on a narrow profit margin. A ministry is a government department. The Ministry of Health issued a warning. And finally, subsidy, which is financial support from the government. Farming is supported by a government subsidy.
Section 2. The Healthy Streets Festival. A story of budgeting gone wrong.
Barnaby had always believed that a budget was just a polite way of saying, we hope for the best and pray for no invoices. So when the local community center asked him to help run their Healthy Streets Festival, he said yes with the absolute confidence of a man who had once read half of a finance article and mistaken it for wisdom. On Monday morning, Barnaby sat in a small office with 3 spreadsheets, 2 cups of cold tea, and one very serious woman from the Ministry of Community Development. She handed him a grant form and said, "This is the money that will be allocated to your project if you prove it is useful."
Barnaby nodded like an expert. In his head, allocate sounded like arrange nicely, which completely made sense because he was already arranging biscuits on the desk. The plan was pretty simple. The festival would teach people about healthy food, exercise, and neighborhood teamwork. The city would grant the group some funds, and Barnaby would invest it wisely. He wrote his very first note: buy banners, tents, fruit, and enough chairs for adults who refuse to stand for more than 4 minutes.
But then the trouble started. Barnaby tried to calculate the costs, but he just kept adding extras. 1 chair became 2. 2 chairs became just-in-case chairs. The snacks became a full-blown mountain of snacks. By lunch, the costs had begun to accumulate like dirty laundry in a bachelor apartment. He looked at the total aggregate and whispered, "That number is not a budget. That number is a cry for help." Still, he had a plan. He would save money by buying in bulk. Unfortunately, he completely misunderstood bulk and ordered 400 watermelons just because the delivery site showed a picture of a smiling athlete holding one. The fruit seller even called to ask if the festival was opening a gym or starting a shipyard. Barnaby just said a little of both. When the watermelons actually arrived, the community center hallway looked like a tropical landslide. People could not bond over coffee because they were way too busy dodging fruit. One volunteer slipped, grabbed a banner, and pulled down the entire registration table. Pens rolled literally everywhere. A child cried. A man in a tracksuit just looked at it all and said, "This is why I only trust toast." The poor volunteers had to labor for hours just moving watermelons from the hallway into the storage room. Barnaby knew he had to compensate for the chaos. He frantically sent volunteers to set up signs, give away free fruit slices, and direct people around the massive mess. He really hoped the damage would diminish before the mayor arrived. Spoiler alert, it did not.
That's when the city accountant arrived, with a sharp pencil and an expression that could practically cut glass. She clearly explained that Barnaby's spending did not equate to smart planning, even if he kept insisting, but cheaper chairs are the exact same thing as expensive chairs, just less comfortable. She also flatly stated that the budget should be the equivalent of the festival's actual real needs, not Barnaby's wild imagination.
And to make matters worse, Barnaby had completely failed to notice the hidden fees. The delivery company had added a levy for oversized produce, and those electric tent heaters were eating money faster than teenagers at a buffet. The financial margin was now so incredibly small, it could have hidden behind a postage stamp.
The accountant just sighed. You have tried to exploit discounts, but only the discounts have exploited you. Ouch, that hurt, but honestly, it was completely fair.
Barnaby finally dropped the act and asked the accountant for some much-needed help. She stepped in and showed him how to facilitate the remaining work by cutting the watermelon order, returning the extra chairs, and brilliantly using the fruit as prizes for a walking challenge. And you know what? That idea worked beautifully. People laughed, joined in, and even forgot that Barnaby had nearly turned the center into a total produce disaster zone.
By evening, the festival was an absolute success. The final costs did not exceed the grant, which honestly felt like a minor miracle. Barnaby even learned that some projects fluctuate in price depending on common sense, and that common sense is usually the cheapest item in any budget.
As the mayor was leaving, he turned and asked Barnaby, "So, what did you learn?" Barnaby looked at the few remaining watermelons and said, "That good planning is not about spending more. It is about spending right, keeping people together, and never, ever trusting a man who says bulk fruit with a credit card."
The accountant smiled for the very first time all day. That, she said, is practically a subsidy for wisdom. Barnaby bowed, dropped a watermelon slice, caught it with one hand, and somehow, despite everything, still looked like a hero.
What's the most absurd budgeting mistake you've ever witnessed? Let me know down in the comments below. Please like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions, let me know in the comments and I'll use them for future videos.